The Templars and the Ancient Wisdom of the Druids, narrated by Zoran the Dragon. Dear traveller, gather round once more, for today we journey into the heart of the mist-shrouded forests, where the ancient Druids, the wise mystics of the Celtic lands, once walked. These seers and spiritual leaders understood the sacred rhythms of the earth, the power of the elements, and the deep connection between the natural world and the divine. It is here, in the green, living temples of nature, that the Templars found themselves face to face with a wisdom older than even the stones of Jerusalem. The Druids, guardians of the Celtic spiritual traditions, were known for their profound knowledge of nature, their abilities as healers and seers, and their role as intermediaries between the earthly and the spiritual realms. Though the Druids had long since vanished from the public eye by the time the Templars roamed the lands, their teachings remained alive in secret, hidden away in the sacred groves, in the whisper of the trees, and in the ancient rituals passed down through generations. The Templars discovered the ancient threads of this mystical tradition. They learned that the Druids did not need grand temples or altars made of gold. Instead, their sanctuaries were the rivers, the oak groves, and the sky above. When the Templars first encountered remnants of Druidic teachings in the Celtic lands, what is now Ireland, Britain, and parts of France, they were drawn to the natural spirituality of the Druids. Unlike many of the traditions the Templars had encountered, the Druids did not seek wisdom in distant heavens, but in the living world around them. The Templars, whose very identity was forged in the holy wars of the Crusades, were accustomed to thinking of spirituality as something lofty, far removed from the earth. But the Druids showed them that the divine could be found in the simplest of places: the rustling of leaves, the flow of water, the flight of a bird. One of the central teachings that the Templars learned from the Druids was the importance of balance, the harmony between the forces of nature and the interconnectedness of all things. The Druids understood the world as a vast, living organism, where every tree, every rock, every creature played a vital role in the cosmic order. To the Druids, the world was a web of elements: earth, air, fire, and water, each essential, each in constant relationship with the other. The Templars, trained to see the world in terms of battlefields and fortresses, were struck by this idea. They realized that true power, true wisdom, came not from conquering or controlling, but from understanding and working in harmony with these natural forces. In their time with the Druids, the Templars were introduced to the sacred cycles of the seasons. The Druids believed that time was not a straight line, but a circle, always returning, always renewing. The wheel of the year, as the Druids called it, was a cycle of life, death, and rebirth, marked by sacred festivals tied to the turning of the seasons: Samhain, Beltane, Imbolc, and Lugnasad. These festivals marked the ebb and flow of the natural world, the thinning of the veil between worlds at Samhain, the return of life at Beltane, the nurturing of seeds in Imbolc, and the harvest in Lugnasad. To the Templars, who had been steeped in the linear time of Christian theology, this circular view of time opened a new way of understanding the universe. They saw that the cycles of nature reflected the spiritual cycles of birth, death, and rebirth that they, too, sought in their own lives. The Druids were also astrologers, mapping the movement of the stars and understanding the profound influence the heavens had on earthly life. The celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and stars, were seen as divine guides, their movement shaping not only the seasons, but the very destiny of individuals. The Templars, always fascinated by the mysteries of the cosmos, absorbed this knowledge, learning to read the stars and planets, not just for navigation, but as signs of deeper spiritual truths. The Druids showed them that the stars above and the earth below were mirrors of each other, connected through an intricate dance that shaped all of life. But perhaps the most mystical of the Druids' teachings lay in their understanding of sacred trees, particularly the oak, which they believed was the king of trees, a living bridge between heaven and earth. The Druids held their ceremonies in oak groves, believing that these trees held great power. Each tree species had its own mystical significance: ash for protection, yew for death and rebirth, and rowan for wisdom and vision. The oak, however, was the tree of strength and endurance, a symbol of the wisdom that comes from standing tall through the storms of life. The Templars were deeply affected by this reverence for trees, and some say they began incorporating these natural symbols into their own secret rites. The sacred groves were the Druids' temples, and it was here, beneath the canopy of ancient trees, that the Templars learned the power of silence and contemplation. The Druids believed that true wisdom could only be found by listening to the whispers of nature, the songs of the wind, and the stillness of the earth. They taught the Templars to connect with the natural world not through force or control, but through deep listening and observation. The earth, they said, had its own language, a language that could only be understood by those who were patient enough to hear it. The Templars, who were used to the noise of battle and the clamor of the world, found solace in these quiet moments in nature, learning that silence could lead to greater spiritual insight than any amount of words or doctrines. One of the most profound teachings the Druids passed on to the Templars was the understanding of sacred geometry. The Druids saw the patterns of nature, the spirals of shells, the branching of trees, the cycles of the moon as reflections of the divine order. They understood that the universe was built on geometric principles, and that by studying these principles, one could glimpse the mind of the Creator. This idea deeply resonated with the Templars, who had already encountered the sacred geometry of the ancient Greeks and Egyptians in their travels. But the Druids showed them that sacred geometry was not just a tool for building temples or understanding the cosmos. It was a way of living in harmony with the natural world. Every action, every movement was part of a greater pattern, a dance of creation and dissolution. The bards, the poet-priests of the Druidic tradition, also left a lasting impression on the Templars. The bards were the keepers of memory, the storytellers who passed down the ancient lore of the Celts through song and poetry. To the Druids, the spoken word was sacred, a living force that could shape reality. The Templars, who were themselves guardians of many sacred texts and traditions, were struck by the Druids' reverence for oral tradition. They realized that wisdom was not just found in books or scrolls, but in the living, breathing stories that connected people to their ancestors, to the land, and to the divine. And so, dear traveler, the Templars returned from their encounters with the Druids forever changed. They had come seeking knowledge, but what they found was far more profound. The Druids had taught them that the true path to wisdom was not a battle to be won, but a journey of harmony, of walking with the natural rhythms of the world, and of understanding that every element, every creature, every star in the sky was part of a vast, interconnected whole. The Templars had discovered that the earth itself was a living temple, and that to walk the path of the divine was to walk in step with the natural world. And so, as the Templars returned to their fortresses and temples, they carried with them the ancient wisdom of the Druids, the knowledge of the cycles of time, the power of the elements, and the sacred geometry of the universe. Though their swords were forged for battle, they now understood that the greatest battle of all was within the battle to live in harmony with the world, and to seek the divine, just in the heavens, but in the earth beneath their feet. And thus ends this chapter of our tale. But remember, dear traveler, that the wisdom of the Druids is not lost to time. It is all around you, in the rustle of the leaves, the turning of the seasons, and the stars that light your way through the night.